Live, but it is not the Sunday recap. Brian Daboll has been fired as the head coach of the New York Giants, so quick react to it. Let us know what you think down below. Instagram and YouTube, we're live. Mike, your opening thoughts on Brian Daboll getting canned? I think we expected it last night, but we get it this morning.
Yeah, expected it last night. Kind of felt like yesterday was the straw that broke the camel's back there, blowing into the lead in the fourth quarter. Just kind of felt like it was time. As somebody that's been a fan of Brian Daboll his entire tenure, it's a tough day. But again, I knew it had to happen. I think we both knew that this had to happen. And, we talked about it last night too, about how this is going to be one of the more attractive jobs on the market if you're able to also fire Joe Schoen with Jackson Dart here. This is one of the more attractive jobs. So, tough day in Giant Land for sure. It's sad. Really thought this was going to be the coach that turned it around, but obviously it's not. It's time to move on.
Yeah, and we had mentioned it yesterday, just the 4 10-point blown leads in fourth quarters. They have an interesting decision, though, to make here still, because I think you're seeing the development of your young quarterback with your offensive coach, and now you're firing him in the middle of that rookie season. So, interestingly, both of the first-round quarterbacks have seen their coaches fired midseason this year, which is not good for quarterback development. We hope and expect that Dart will not be a casualty of his coach being fired. But it's definitely an interesting choice by the Giants. I would have done it, but I don't think it was an easy one.
Yeah, I hate that. I hate the fact that Dart has looked so. I mean, I don't hate the fact that Dart's played well, but I hate the fact that, Daboll's gone now. And this was, listen, in the room, we've seen through videos, we've seen through interviews that Dart was Daboll's guy. Like, Dart's here because of Brian Daboll, and Dart has started to play really well now. So do I think that Jackson Dart is playing well just because of Brian Daboll? No, I think the kid has talent. I think the kid will work with more talent around him and another coach. But it's hard to not think about the fact that he's here because of Brian Daboll.
Yeah, and for sure that their relationship at least is a positive one. And that relationship between coach and quarterback is arguably, and I would agree, the most important relationship within your entire locker room. So they have a good one. I'm sure that Kafka and Dart have a good one. Kafka's going to stay. And I think that there's an element of this where Kafka deserves the audition for the last few weeks. I know that no Giants fan is going to jump on here and say Kafka's their next head coach. I know that there's a less than 1% chance he gets the job, but I think he deserves this audition with the way that the season has gone, which has really been an utter disaster, even though we don't like to say that because the quarterbacks look good.
That's fine. Kafka deserves a shot. I'm okay with that. He's gotten interviews over the past few years, not only for just other offensive coordinator jobs, but for head coaching jobs as well. Interviewed in Seattle a couple of years back. So, yeah, I'm okay with that. Intrigued to see what he can do. How does the offense look? And again, was it all Daboll, or was it a mix of Kafka and Daboll with the way Dart plays? As long as Dart plays, by the way, we don't know if he's going to play with a concussion next week. But yeah, 100%. We threw out a couple of names last night, and I'm starting to get a little bit more excited about a couple of those names that we threw out there, offensive-minded guys. So it'll be interesting to see where they go and who gets interviews and whether or not Kafka is going to have, a legitimate shot to stay.
I know we're in agreement on this. Mike McCarthy's the first guy the Giants have to call about this job. He's a guy that has won at every stop. He won in Dallas. I know they didn't win the Super Bowl. I know the standard there was higher, but the Giants need to get to that level. And you have the quarterback. Go get the offensive mind that is going to put an offense in place that scores points, that is a consistent 10-win per year coach. He just didn't work out at the end in Green Bay. It didn't work out in Dallas because of a lot of different factors. Winning seasons and making the playoffs were not one of them. So McCarthy's going to get you into the playoffs. He's going to build a team that fans can be proud to watch, and he's the safest option to continue the development of your quarterback. I think he's absolutely the most attractive candidate for this job from the Giants' perspective.
I was texting with a friend that's a Dallas Cowboy fan last night, and I mentioned that to him, and he said, the clock management, and I kind of forgot about how bad he was clock management-wise. So I think as long as his assistants, at least somebody has experience with that, almost like a clock management guy on the sideline, I'm good with it because I know how good McCarthy is with quarterbacks. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers, Dak Prescott had career years under him. I mean, even Cooper Rush last season played really well, and they were competitive late in the season. So I'm all for Mike McCarthy at the moment until another candidate crosses my mind here, and they become my favorite.
Is Shane getting fired in season here too?
Shane better get fired. I don't know if it's in season, but he better get fired. I just don't think they have anybody in that front office currently that could actually take over, right? Like, yeah, I would have making the argument that Daboll's the best coach on the roster. I don't know how you could fire Daboll in season. They want to give Kafka a shot. That's fine. I don't know if there's somebody in that building that could take over as general manager for the next few weeks, but Joe Shane better be fired or I'm going to have massive issues.
I think last year with the Jets, they're an interesting comparison. They fired Robert Saleh after week 4 or week 5, and that's a totally different thing, the Saleh versus Daboll firing. Mm-hmm. But they also fired Joe Douglas around this time last year, right after the trade deadline. They were able to then start their coach and general manager search in December. They hired the 33rd team, and who knows if it'll work out, right? Like, they're 2-7 right now. Yeah. We're not talking about that. But I think for the Giants and for any team in this situation, it's very beneficial to just get out ahead of it and understand what you're dealing with before that first week of January comes around and everyone starts getting fired, because right now you can leverage yourself as the only available job with the coach and general manager open, and you can cast that wide net right away.
I wonder how much John Mara's health has something to do with this, and whether or not he wants to start over completely with the general manager and head coach. Obviously knows and knew he had to start over with the head coach. And again, when you talk about his health and where he's at, does that play a role? And does Mike McCarthy get an upper hand because he's won before, because he's a bigger name, because he's had success, in the division and with a high pressure team? How much does that play a role? Not only does it look good on his resume, but because of the situation that John Mara and the Giants are in.
Yeah, it's a good point. Mara's health definitely doesn't play a non-factor in all of this. It's going to be a factor in every decision he makes in his life right now.
Yep.
I think that it was just time anyways for Daboll. And I wonder, what is the relationship between Daboll and Shane as of yesterday? I think they were not on speaking terms. I think that they have not gotten along over the last year or so. I have said it for a few years now. It's not this crazy hot take. Daboll obviously isn't the easiest personality to get along with. That happened with the Wink Martindale departure. The two of them totally clashed, and Wink is in the same boat. But I think that at this point in time, Shane and Daboll probably did not have the best working relationship, and that was probably a factor in this decision too.
No, 100%. And I think just the fact that, I don't think Shane made this decision.
I don't think so either, but I think
Shane did not make this decision.
I think that the Giants' culture this season, as an outsider looking in with little to no knowledge, has seemed very rocky. I think since the Hard Knocks thing last year, it started to just get into a rocky place behind the scenes.
Well, I also feel like you listen to the outside noise and who deserves blame and who doesn't deserve blame. And, I've always been on the side of, I think Joe Shane deserves the blame more so than Brian Daboll. Not saying he's exonerated, but yeah, I've just always felt like Joe Shane has done more harm than Daboll here. And I still believe that to be true. And I still believe Joe Shane should be fired. But yeah, I mean, Daboll's the first guy to go. He's essentially right now being scapegoated for what is another disastrous season. And that's not right, because he doesn't deserve all the blame. He shouldn't be the scapegoat. It should be Joe Shane, but he's in the position of power to make that call or help make that call.
I also think in general, Daboll's done a really bad job here too. Like, I'm not going to exonerate him of that. I think he's been a bad coach. The first year maybe plagues the mind of a lot of Giants fans in saying this guy completely sucks, but you're 2-7 every year. You start the year 2-7 now since then, and they're not a competitive football team. They blow leads in the fourth quarter every week. It just feels like the coaching has not elevated a roster. And again, this is not a praise to Shane. This is not a defense of Shane. But the roster should not be as miserable as it is when it hits the field on Sunday either. They don't feel prepared for a lot of games the last 3 seasons, and that's on coaching. They don't feel ready to close games. And I think I have to imagine Daboll has a little bit of a say in some of the personnel decisions that have gone wrong the last few years. If he was banging the table saying Jones is not our franchise quarterback, Saquon Barkley is our franchise player, I think that probably goes a different way. I think they were in alignment on a lot of the decisions the last few years that went wrong.
100%, 100%. And he hasn't done a good job. And when you're not able to close games out, and when you're constantly committing penalties and you don't seem ready to play big games, 100%. I think you're right in saying that first year really clouded a lot of us Giant fans' minds about what this guy was. We also knew that he had something to do with with Mr. Josh Allen over there. And let me just say this now about the Josh Allen stuff. Josh Allen got better after he left, right? I'm sure he had something to do with his development, but Allen went on to win an MVP when he left. So let's just not forget that. And I think any offensive coach is going to really enjoy the opportunity to come in and coach Jackson Dart and get the most out of Jackson Dart.
So who is like the next group of guys that you're circling for this job? Because I feel like whenever you get that to this point in the year, you have that opening, in the next few days, names are going to really start to pop up. And Mike McCarthy's obviously one of them. We kind of spoke about him a few minutes ago. Belichick's going to get floated around here big time. And we spoke about him last night a little, but where are you at today now that the job is open thinking about Belichick?
Yeah, I still feel the same way I did over the weekend, which I'm not interested in bringing Bill Belichick and that circus here to New York. I don't think we are, and I know this sounds absolutely crazy, I don't think we're emphasizing enough how much control his fiance girlfriend has on his life. I mean, these stories and these videos that have come across at least my Twitter timeline here, it's not good. It's not a good situation. And I don't think anybody in the NFL is going to have the appetite to deal with not only him at his age, but now her as well. I don't think there's any chance Bill Belichick is coaching in the NFL.
No, I don't think so either, because you also have the $10 million buyout at North Carolina. There's a lot of hoops you have to jump through to actually make this happen. He has to consider leaving. I don't know how bought in he is to building that program, and he might be. We really don't know. I don't think it happens. I think that it would be a fit that I wouldn't be upset about with the Giants, but I don't think it happens. And McCarthy's the real veteran. He's done it before guy. Let me riff off these coordinators for you, though, that maybe would be options. First guy,
I got a couple.
Kingsbury. Would Kingsbury be a guy that interests you?
Not really. I wouldn't hate it, but I'm not totally interested. I mean, he's down the list.
And then Hafley in Green Bay.
Hafley, yes. Again, we talked about it last night. Who's the offensive coordinator? Who is he bringing over?
Yeah, and if you felt good about that, you feel good about Hafley. And then I guess some of the retread guys like Brian Flores, Mike McDaniel, if he does get fired, any of those guys that you'd be interested in? Probably not for this job.
McDaniel possibly, definitely as a coordinator. Don't know how much of an appetite I would as head coach. A couple of other coordinators here, two guys. Do you go the same route and hire an offensive coordinator from Buffalo and Joe Brady? Do you go that route?
I wouldn't.
And how about Clint Kubiak, who's doing an unbelievable job over there in Seattle right now?
Yeah, Kubiak's interesting because he's doing a great job.
Get a job. He's going to get a job.
He's doing a great job. He deserves to get a job. Dad's a Super Bowl winning coach. I don't know if I'd hire him for this one, but if they did, I wouldn't feel terrible about it. I need to know first, too, who's going to be the general manager. Is Shane staying or not?
I think he's going to get fired. I don't think they're going to go about this the wrong way. It's just weird that he's not fired yet. Like, this couldn't be a tandem thing here. We couldn't fire both of them at the same time.
It's, I mean,
McCarthy's number one on my list.
I'm not convinced Shane's getting dumped.
I'm not convinced of it either. I think so.
And that's a problem.
But I'm not fully confident. I'm worried about it. I think he gets fired, but I'm not 110%. Oh yeah, he's definitely there.
Yeah.
No,
McCarthy's the top guy, and obviously, if you do get the opening with Shane, there are there's the common trend of the thread of GM and coach coming from the same place or having worked together before. I do think two interesting names in the whole thing are Nolan Teasley, who's the assistant GM in Seattle. He's been there since 2013. So he was a part of them building the Super Bowl roster, part of them rebuilding this roster now twice into playoff teams and now into another contender. If Kubiak is the route, that's an interesting pairing. I don't know how it's tough because like you don't know how you feel about coordinators, right? And a lot of people are throwing Kingsbury out there. A lot of people throw out Brian Flores, but I know that I don't think they're great head coaches. I already know it. So I'd almost rather let me roll the dice with these guys because every great coach was once a great coordinator. I mean, nobody was a head coach first. You're always a coordinator first. I'm fine with rolling the dice on coordinators. I'm really not a hater. If you can't get McCarthy, I'd probably go to one of the coordinators. I'd go with Hafley or Kubiak if I can't get McCarthy.
How about Minter, Jesse Minter? He's
interesting. I got to see the OC, though, and I don't think that the Chargers' defense has been overwhelmingly great. They had a great night last night, but I wouldn't – that coaching tree is great that the Harbaughs have put out, so that's one thing you got going for you, but I'd have to see. Again, who's the GM?
Is Hafley going to be the next – I think a lot of this, right, with the young quarterback now, you're trying to find that next kind of situation you have in Seattle. You know, you have a defensive coach, and he was, felt like a home run hire from the beginning. Everybody loved him, McDonald. But he's a defensive coach. You have a young quarterback, not a young quarterback, but a quarterback that resurrected his career and is continuing to do so with a good OC. I think people are trying to find that pairing. Is Hafley that next guy? Is Hafley that next young defensive coordinator, defensive coach that gets the head coaching job, and it's a home run?
He might be because he's already a guy with head coaching experience too. That's what is very intriguing to me about Hafley is he was the coach of Boston College. He has had a big time. I know like Boston College, we're going to scoff at it, but it's a big head coaching job for a guy who's a coordinator in the NFL right now to have had in his early 40s. Like that's not a joke that he got that job and had a little bit of success there and then got thrusted right into one of the NFL's most premier openings for a coordinator that offseason. What would bother me is, are you going to come in here and bring in, like a Luke Getsy, LaFleur retread who's already failed as an OC? Hackett, I think, is completely done, even though he's in Green Bay right now. Yeah. He's totally done as a play caller. But are you going to bring in one of those guys who I've already seen do a bad job and you just think, okay, the quarterback's here now, he'll do a good job? That's what I can't have with a guy like Hafley.
Gotcha. That makes sense. That would make sense. And I don't even know the GM candidates. Like, I'm not even there on GM candidates yet. I'm barely there on head coaching candidates.
The best way to operate with the GM candidates, first of all, again, you have to see if Shane gets fired. The best way to operate is just who are the best teams in the league? Do they have longer tenured assistant general managers? Or is it a team like San Fran, who, Adam Peters just left 2 years ago? You have to let the AGM build up a little bit of a resume. If Shane stays, we talked about this last night a little bit. If Shane stays, I don't think the job's that attractive. Do you agree?
I would agree. I think it's attractive, but not that attractive.
And if he doesn't stay, if the GM chair opens, this is the most attractive job in the NFL by far. People are going to want to come. People are going to be drooling over Jackson Dart, over the chance to pick in the top 5 in this year's draft. Think about that luxury. Think about that luxury. You already have the franchise quarterback. They just picked 3rd in the last draft and got a premier defensive talent. And now you're going to be picking top 5 again with an elite wide receiver already, a good group of running backs, and a talented defense overall, and the resources to acquire more picks over the next few years with some veterans that you might want to move on from. Like, they have a really good job opening, but if you don't get rid of the GM, the job opening is not one that I would take.
And this is something that we need to pound this into the head of John Mara, that he needs to make this call and get rid of Joe Schoen because it is that attractive. You're going to have a top 5 pick, teams drooling for some of these quarterbacks, and you are going to trade back under the bottom of the top 10, acquire more draft picks, and get a wide receiver, get a corner, and at the bottom of the top 10 plus more picks later in the draft. This or a pick next year, who the hell knows? It's a perfect situation to be in because the future is so bright for a new GM, new head coach. Please just do it. Please, for the love of God, just do it.
They have to. I think they will too. I'm not
You think
sure that they will, but I don't know how you don't. I don't know how you don't, because you're going to get to that situation that Jacksonville was in last offseason with Trent Baalke. And they got to a point in February where the coach literally came in that they wanted and said, you got to fire him or I'm not taking this job.
Yeah.
And I think Mara, as much as everybody wants to give him crap, I think he's smarter than Khan, and he understands, and he's going to call around. He's been in the league for so long. He's as well respected as anybody. He's going to call around and he's going to say, how attractive is this job? How good is Joe Schoen? And how have you viewed his tenure? Is he someone I should be keeping? And people are going to say no.
And they're going to move on. And they're going
to move on.
They're going to hire a new GM. And they're going to be, the franchise is going to be back. We're so close to being back. We're so close.
And not for nothing, Steve Tisch, who's probably very involved if Mara's trying to take a step back with his health, Steve Tisch is firing Joe Schoen. Everything I know about Steve Tisch tells me he's dumping Schoen because he's much more aggressive than Mara. He's not the principal owner, though, but he's the second guy, and he has a lot of influence on the Mara family. And he's going to tell them, like, this has got to be a clean slate. Got to wipe it
clean freaking slate.
And I think, you could correct me if I'm wrong, as flawed as Mike McCarthy was, you probably looked at that as somebody in the Giants organization for a few years and said, this Dallas team is tough to beat. We're not on the same level as them.
Well, for basically his entire tenure there, at least with Dak Prescott was healthy, they
literally beat them every time.
Every time they beat the Giants. So it was a team that you looked up to and said, wow, I'd like to be, even though they don't win the Super Bowl, even though they're not in the NFC Championship game, I'd like to be that team. I mean, it's just about getting there, and it might sound like a loser comment, but if that's what they were every year, a chance to get to the divisional round in the playoffs and win the division, like, I'm signing up for that right now because we have been at the bottom, literally the worst or second worst team in the NFL. Both of our teams have been for the last 10 years now.
Yeah, the last 5 years, I think the Jets and Giants are last in wins, and I think they're tied after yesterday. I got to check that, but I think that's literally how bad it is. And the idea of being in the playoffs every year, it's not just the Jets and Giants thing. We want to get there and be at that place. There's 20 teams in the league searching for that. Mike McCarthy gives it to you.
Yeah, 100%. And when you're the top job, when you have the top job opening and Tennessee calls and, who else is going to call? Who else is going to be making calls? The Raiders call. And Arizona possibly calls.
Cleveland. Would you hire Stefanski for this job?
I would hire Stefanski. I like Kevin Stefanski. I would hire him. I would just take that. I would take that tandem. If they fire Barry too, I'd tell Barry to come over too. That'd be my GM.
I wouldn't do Barry because he is just, colossally botched the quarterback situation there. And I'm not even trusting him with Dart because
did Haslam? Did he do it or did Haslam botch the quarterback situation?
I think Barry got rid of Mayfield.
Okay, but
and then that sets up this domino effect of he got rid of Mayfield, then they got Deshaun Watson, whoever played that part, and then they just had this disaster.
When you have the opportunity at that time to trade in, basically, I know they gave up a lot more, but you're essentially swapping out Baker for Deshaun.
Yeah.
I don't think there was a human being on the planet that would have said no to that, correct?
And I would agree with you, and at the time, that's exactly how I felt, but I don't get paid to make that decision either. He gets paid a lot of money to make that decision, and it has been royally botched.
But it was the owner that gave him the money. It was the owner that gave him the fully guaranteed contract. So now it's out of his hands. To make sure that deal got done, the owner gave him something stupid, which everybody got pissed about.
Yeah, that was obviously a huge issue. And then Watson has not played, and they haven't been able to do anything
right
since then. But that's not even as much Barry's fault. I would just be interested in Stefanski and a different GM. Either way, doesn't matter. Stefanski's an interesting
You
name
like
for this
you like Stefanski.
I like him. I think you can do worse. I
They're
think
going to fire him.
So I think you're upgrading obviously there.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't be my first, second, or third guy, but he'd maybe be my Mike Brown with the Knicks, where like I think they had a couple other guys that they really wanted, and then you were happy to still land on this coach.
That's fine. That's fair.
That's I think Stefanski would fall.
I think again, this is going to be the top job most likely, and I think they're going to have their pick at who is head coach.
They should. And again,
just like it was, by the way, the situation wasn't great, but I felt like when they hired Daboll, it was also the top job.
I thought the Chargers job was.
Is they hired Staley that year?
That's the year they hired Staley.
But Daboll could – no, it wasn't, because Daboll could have went there the year prior.
Was that what it was?
Okay. Yeah, and they turned it down.
That's what it was. Because I know he interviewed for both, but it was different years. You're right.
He should have been.
Who else was that? Who else was Daboll's hiring cycle?
Was it the Jets or was Saleh?
No. Daboll was January 28th, 2022.
Who got fired after the 21 season or during?
Might have been Sirianni.
Sirianni. I thought Saleh.
No, Saleh was the year before because they drafted Zach Wilson.
Right.
Oh, this is a huge coaching cycle. Todd Bowles, Josh McDaniels, Raiders, Dennis Allen to the Saints. Those were a lot of internals. Hackett, Broncos, Mike McDaniel to the Dolphins, Kevin O'Connell, Vikings, Daboll, Giants, Peterson, Jaguars, Eberflus, Bears, Lovie Smith, Texans.
So the Jaguars and the Vikings were probably the other top job.
Yeah, because the Saints and Bucks didn't open. They hired Bowles and they hired Dennis Allen, who were already there. The Broncos might have been the top job because they were getting
Russ.
You knew early in that year they were getting Russ or Aaron Rodgers.
Right. And they had the defense.
And that's why they got Hackett, because they thought they were getting
Rodgers.
Although, Minnesota would not have been a bad opening this year. I don't know how I felt about that at the time, though. I just truly don't remember how I felt about O'Connell taking that, because they had Kirk Cousins. They had a team that had been to the playoffs a few times. But it was probably the Giants, because you were walking into those 2 draft picks.
And walking into the 2 draft picks, a ton of money, and they just hired Shane, who was very well respected around the league in Buffalo, and you kind of felt like they also hit a home run with aligning those 2 guys from Buffalo. That had a lot to do with Josh Allen. Josh Allen got these guys a job and a lot of money.
Now, it's just interesting to think back to where this went wrong, because they win the playoff game in year 1, which was a tank year. We all were talking about C.J. Stroud before the season and which quarterback the Giants were going to go after and were they going to be able to land a top 3 pick. They end up winning 9 games in a playoff game. Obviously, they don't pick top 10. They don't pick top 20. They end up getting Deontay Banks late.
Banks.
Which is that's part of the where did we go wrong spot. But it's crazy to think back on that first year as, I hate to say this, completely meaningless.
Meaningless, I would say. I mean, I don't know how to say meaningless. They won a playoff game, and I haven't seen many playoff wins in my life, so I'm not going to say meaningless. But the one thing I will say is a lot of injuries, a lot of bad injury luck, and I'm not blaming it on that. A lot went wrong, but injuries crushed this regime for 3 years, and everybody deals with injuries, right? It's a physical game. It happens. They had a ton of injury luck. They never had depth. I don't think Shane ever put him in really good spots, and obviously a massive misjudgment on the quarterback. The hard knocks didn't help. Saquon Barkley having one of the greatest seasons a running back has ever had did not help. A lot went wrong for this regime.
And I think when you look back at it, what really was the Achilles heel was the draft picks. And that lends itself to not having enough depth ever. And whenever you lost Andrew Thomas, your entire team imploded. And whenever you lost a certain, whoever it was, if you lost any key starter, the entire unit folded because you missed. Right off the rip, and I really haven't gone here too consistently with Thibodeau, but you had the 5th and 7th pick, and you just could not have done worse at 7. And at 5, you didn't get a true game-changing player. So you got a good player and a terrible, unplayable right tackle at 7. And their day 2 drafting was awful, this entire regime. I never even on the night of the draft, it's very rare for me on the night of the draft to not even like the picks. My whole thing with the draft stuff I do is like the top 50 guys are, I tell you what they can do. I try to stay away from like, this is why they're not good. And this is why I wouldn't take them. Like, this is what they're good at. And that's what I like to look at. And the Giants picked guys on day 2 that I just was sitting there like, what is their process? How did they get to like Wan'Dale Robinson? How did they get to this in the 40s in the draft? And
he's not a bad player either.
And he's not, but it's just the process of doing those things. Because I bet you in the Wan'Dale draft, like someone in the next 5 picks was way better. And that's for every team usually, but that's every pick that Joe Schoen made.
Newbin, you weren't a fan of Newbin?
Newbin, I didn't like there. I thought he was a good 3rd round guy, but they take him in round 2. And ironically, I like Banks.
Yeah.
Because I thought he was perfect wing fit. And so did they. And he was good for that first year.
He was.
But the draft picks are where they went wrong. And they might have left somehow as heroes by getting Jackson Dart with that last first round pick that Joe Schoen probably ever makes.
Yeah, which again wasn't fully his call, which was a lot of Brian Daboll's influence on that pick because that was his guy.
And a lot of they needed a quarterback to save their jobs potentially. He was their lifeline.
And the other thing is, like, a lot of the picks fell to Joe Schoen. You know, again, if Carter becomes a Hall of Fame, and I was thinking about this when I'm trying to think of a case for him to keep his job, but it's really not, because Carter falls to your lap. So if Carter becomes a really good player, well, he fell into your lap. And Brian Burns, you made the trade and paid him, but you made the trade with your best friend who was just trying to dump him. And Malik Neighbors falls right into your lap, right? Like at 6. Like, there was no doubt about it. It was the only pick you could have made at 6. So we're really going to like give him credit for those picks? You really can't.
Get no credit. And if you look at the day 3 guys he's brought in, every really good GM has a couple day 3 picks who are really good players. The guys that stand out on day 3 for Joe Schoen are like Theo Johnson and Tyrone Tracy. And this year you got Scadaboo, but it's a terrible history on day 3 also. But like looking back at this 2023 draft, you almost feel like Brian Daboll needed a mulligan in this whole tenure because his front office drafts Deonte Banks, John Michael Schmitz, Jalen Hyatt, and Eric Gray with your first 4 picks. Those are awful players.
Yeah.
Awful players.
Gray's not here anymore. Hyatt should have been cut a while ago. Schmitz is not good. And obviously Banks. Yeah, it's not good. It's not what you want.
No. And even that first pick, that first draft, you're loaded with picks. You have 5 picks in the first 3 rounds, 2 in the top 10. You walk away with Kayvon Thibodeau, who has 23 sacks in 4 years. Then Evan Neal, who is the worst lineman in the NFL.
Yep.
Wan'Dale Robinson, who's a good slot receiver, but we're not like jumping for joy that he's on this team. Josh Azudu, Cordell Flott. Those are your 5 picks in the first 3 rounds. A couple of good players in there, but you better have with 5 picks.
Yeah.
But that's not a game-changing draft. That's not a franchise alternate. And then on day 3, you get Bellinger, Dane Belton, Micah McFadden, who might be the best freaking player in the whole thing.
Yeah. It's insane. Yeah, McFadden ended up being a really good player. Belton's a nice rotational safety, but yeah, the drafts killed him, and this might be the best draft of them all here in 2025, which is insane. This might be the best draft of them all, and he's not going to be able to see it really play out.
No, he's not. And you know what? You're in. I said this to a couple friends yesterday. You're in year 4, and you want a playoff game in year 1. You're in the same spot in year 4 as the Saints in year 1 with Kellen Moore in a total tank job, as the Jets in year 1 with Aaron Glenn in a total tank job. They just traded their 2 best players last week. You have the same record. You're actually worse. You're one loss worse.
No other staff changes. Shane, Bowen, all keep the job, which is just insane. Which is just
but you know
absolutely wild.
At this point, too, like I expect it. It's going to be tough for Kafka to come in to being a head coach now for the rest of the season, and then you need to also bring on a first-time DC, because I don't think they have a defensive position coach under Bowen who's been a defensive coordinator.
No, I guess you're right. Oh, God.
So
I
now
just
you're trying
hope
to
they don't. I just hope this wasn't screwed up. I just hope that and again, I know there's so much. I'm a Daboll fan. I was always a Daboll fan, and I see why they had to fire him. But I just hope this isn't something that bites them in the ass down the road, because, maybe it was Dart playing well in Daboll's system.
I don't think it will, but
you think Dart can play. You think Dart can play, and that's that.
I do, but listen, I'm not going to sit here and say it's a guarantee that he is great for the rest of his career. Like, if you bring in Hafley and it's a total Saleh situation, Robert Saleh, all things considered, right? I think bad head coach. And I'm not going to say he got jetsed. Bad head coach, great defensive coach. The Jets defense was really good with him. He did his job there. Their special teams was good. He couldn't bring in an offensive scheme, coordinator, quarterback for the life of him. If that situation happens, you could see Dart regress to the mean.
Yeah. No. And that's the problem. Joe Schoen staying in place. It's just catching up on Twitter right now. It's a mess. But hopefully it's cleaned up. Hopefully it's cleaned up soon.
Yeah, absolutely. You have closing thoughts here?
Joe Burrow might be back by Thanksgiving.
Yeah, actually just
open up the practice window. Also, can I say this actually before we leave? Maybe just so that I don't have to go on StreamYard later and record a clip. If I see the Pittsburgh Steelers in the postseason this year, I'm done. The NFL should actually step in and not allow the Pittsburgh Steelers to make the playoffs. If for some reason they finish with a better record than the Ravens, they should stack correction, something, please. For the love of God, enough of the Pittsburgh Steelers. They need to go under 500 one year. Enough of this crap. They're the most boring team I've ever watched in my entire life for like 5 straight years now. Just incredibly boring. Enough. They can't make the playoffs. They shouldn't be allowed to make the playoffs anymore.
If Mike Tomlin got fired, how quick did the Giants call him?
Oh, yeah, and then that's my head coach. Yeah, awesome.
You would be upset?
I don't. If he's going to bring the same boring brand of football, I'm going to be.
Well, it's like him and Mike McCarthy are going to give you the same thing with completely different paths. You're going to get a guy who manages the clock really well. Defense is probably going to be really good. And you're going to play great situational football. And then Mike McCarthy, you're going to win almost as many games, but your defense is going to suck. You're giving up 40 points a game. It's going to look way cooler when you win, and Dart's going to have way better numbers. But when you get to January, you probably feel a little bit worse about your opportunity to win.
I'd rather the McCarthy Dart.
Okay.
Dart. That's just, it's more enjoyable. I can't sit there and watch this crap Steeler football anymore. I'm so done.
All right, that's going to be a wrap today on the Brian Daboll Fired episode. Quick little live. Thanks for tuning in. Interesting rest of the season. We'll talk about it as the year progresses with Dabes and the situation with the Giants and whether or not Joe Schoen gets dumped. Thanks for watching, and we will see you